For decades, fans thought they knew Taxi Driver. They remembered the mohawk, the guns, the mirror scene, and Travis Bickle staring into the darkness of New York. But the cast and filmmakers have revealed details that change how the movie can be understood. Robert De Niro has even confirmed that one of the film's most famous moments was created in the moment rather than simply performed from the page. And that is only the beginning. Because behind Travis's story was another story, one about loneliness, obsession, fear, and a city that seemed to be breaking apart. The biggest clue to understanding Taxi Driver may be the man who created Travis Bickle in the first place. Travis looks like a character invented for a movie, but his loneliness, anger, and strange thoughts came from a much more personal place. Screenwriter Paul Schrader has explained that the story grew out of a difficult period in his own life. He was struggling, isolated, and searching for a way to understand what was happening inside his own mind. He later described loneliness as the central theme of the story. That changes the way we see Travis. He is not simply a dangerous man driving through New York at night. He is a man who has slowly disconnected from normal life. He cannot sleep. He has trouble connecting with other people. He watches the city from behind the glass of his taxi, close enough to see everything, but never truly part of it. That taxi becomes more than a job. It becomes his private world. The BFI describes Travis as an ex-Marine disturbed by the nighttime streets of 1970s New York. From his seat behind the wheel, he sees crime, sex, drugs, and people he believes represent everything wrong with the city. But the strange part is that the more he watches the world around him, the more disconnected he becomes from it. And this is where the movie quietly tricks the audience. At first, Travis may look like someone trying to clean up a dirty city. But the deeper we go into his thoughts, the harder it becomes to separate his idea of justice from his own growing obsession. Schrader even connected the story to Arthur Bremer, the man who attempted to assassinate Alabama Governor George Wallace in 1972. Bremer had kept a diary, and the strange intimacy of that writing helped influence the voice and mindset behind Travis. So when Travis speaks in his journal-like voice, we are not simply hearing a movie character explain himself. We are being pulled inside the mind of someone who believes his private thoughts make perfect sense. That is what makes him frightening. And Robert De Niro understood that the character could not be played like a normal villain. Travis had to believe he was a hero of his own story. But De Niro did something with Travis that went beyond the written page. And one small choice will become one of the most famous moments in the entire movie. That is where the story gets even more surprising. The famous mirror scene was not simply about a man pretending to be tough. It was about Travis practicing for a moment that existed only inside his own head. Robert De Niro understood that Travis spent most of his life alone. He had very few real conversations, and even fewer meaningful relationships. So when Travis stands in front of the mirror and talks to himself, we are watching a man rehearse an identity. "You talking to me?" The line became one of the most famous moments in American movie history. But what makes it so powerful is that it feels almost accidental. Travis is not speaking to another person. He is imagining a confrontation and preparing himself for it. Director Martin Scorsese allowed De Niro room to explore the moment. De Niro later explained that the scene was largely improvised around a basic idea of Travis imagining someone in front of him. That freedom helped create the strange rhythm of the performance. Travis starts as if he is talking to someone, then becomes more aggressive, then seems almost amused by himself. That is important because Travis is not simply becoming stronger. He is becoming someone else. The movie keeps showing us this transformation through small details. His body changes. His clothes change. His hair changes. Most importantly, his confidence changes. The quiet cab driver slowly starts acting like a man preparing for a mission. But there is something viewers often miss. Travis does not begin with one clear plan. His mind moves from one target to another. First, he becomes obsessed with Betsy. Then his attention shifts toward the political world, surrounding Senator Palantine. Later, he focuses on sport and the people connected to Iris. The target changes. The obsession remains. That tells us something important about Travis. His real enemy may not be one person, or even one part of New York. His real enemy is a feeling of powerlessness inside himself. He wants to matter. He wants someone to notice him. and he wants to believe that all of his loneliness has a purpose. This is one reason De Niro's performance remains so unsettling. He does not play Travis as a man who knows he is evil. He plays him as a man who has created his own explanation for the world. That makes every later decision more dangerous. Because once Travis starts believing that violence can give his life meaning, the line between fantasy and reality begins to disappear. And there was another person on set who had to understand that dangerous line. She was only 12 years old. Her name was Jodie Foster, and her role as Iris would become one of the most uncomfortable parts of the entire film. The strangest thing about Taxi Driver may be that one of the youngest people on the set understood something about Travis that many adults did not. Jodie Foster was only 12 when she played Iris, the young girl trapped in the dangerous world Travis becomes obsessed with rescuing. Because of her age, the production faced serious concerns about her involvement in the movie. Foster had to go through psychological evaluation, and a welfare worker monitored her work. For some scenes considered too mature, her older sister Connie served as her stand-in. But Foster's experience with the movie was not simply about being protected from difficult material. It was also about learning how to act. Before filming, Robert De Niro spent time with Foster away from the set. They went to diners and talked through the script. De Niro was already deeply focused on Travis, and Foster later remembered that he could be socially awkward during these meetings because he was staying close to character. At first, she was not impressed. She found the experience boring. Then something changed. De Niro began showing her how improvisation could help create a character. Instead of simply saying the words written in the script, she could think about what Iris wanted, how she would react, and what she might say in the moment. That lesson stayed with Foster. She later described those meetings as an important part of learning how to build a character. And there is an important detail here. Foster was not simply playing a helpless child waiting for Travis to save her. Iris had her own personality, her own choices, and her own understanding of the world around her. That made the relationship between Iris and Travis much more complicated. Travis believes he is rescuing her, but Iris does not necessarily see herself the same way. That difference is easy to miss because the movie spends so much time inside Travis's head. We see the city through his eyes. We hear his thoughts. We watch him turn ordinary events into signs that something must be done. Iris becomes part of that fantasy. She gives Travis a mission. And once Travis has a mission, his loneliness suddenly feels meaningful. This is one of the movie's most powerful tricks. Travis may believe he is helping Iris, but his obsession with her also gives him an excuse to become the person he's been imagining in the mirror. The closer he gets to his idea of becoming a hero, the less stable that idea becomes. And that is exactly where the movie starts hiding its darkest question. What if Travis was never the hero of this story at all? What if the real danger was the way he convinced himself that he was? Because once you notice that, several scenes begin to look completely different. The most disturbing thing about Taxi Driver is that the movie never gives Travis a simple answer. Is he a monster? Is he a victim? Is he trying to save someone? Or is he simply looking for a reason to use the anger that has been growing inside him? The film refuses to make that easy. That was part of what made the story so powerful. Paul Schrader built Travis around loneliness, but loneliness is only the starting point. Travis watches New York at night and sees a world filled with people he believes are dirty or corrupt. He begins to imagine that someone needs to clean it up, and slowly, he decides that someone should be him. But there is a dangerous idea hiding inside that thinking. Travis never truly asks whether his view of the city is correct. He simply trusts what he sees. If someone makes him uncomfortable, he becomes suspicious. If someone rejects him, he becomes angry. If someone does not fit his idea of how people should behave, he places them into the same dark picture he has created in his mind. This is why the movie feels less like a normal crime story and more like a journey into one man's distorted thinking. The audience hears Travis's thoughts, but those thoughts are not presented as absolute truth. They are his truth. That difference matters. One of the film's most important relationships is Travis's obsession with Betsy. He sees her as different from the rest of the city. He places her on a pedestal and creates an image of her that is far more perfect than the real person could ever be. When that fantasy collapses, Travis does not simply accept rejection. He becomes even more isolated. That failure helps push him toward another obsession. And this is where the story becomes deeply uncomfortable. Travis starts preparing himself physically and mentally. He buys weapons. He practices. He changes his appearance. He builds a new identity around the idea that he is finally going to do something important. The movie does not treat this transformation like a heroic training montage. It feels empty, cold, almost mechanical. He is preparing for violence. But what he really seems to be preparing for is recognition. He wants his life to mean something. And the more he believes violence can give him that meaning, the more dangerous he becomes. There is another reason this idea still feels so modern. Taxi Driver does not show us a man who suddenly becomes violent for no reason. It shows a slow process. Isolation becomes resentment. Resentment becomes obsession. Obsession becomes fantasy. Fantasy starts turning into action. That progression is what makes Travis frightening, because nothing happens all at once. The warning signs are there long before the final explosion. And then the film does something even stranger. It gives Travis a moment that looks almost like redemption. The public begins treating him differently. People start seeing him as a hero. But the question remains, did Travis really change? Or did the world simply misunderstand what happened? That question leads directly to the movie's most shocking contradiction. The most unsettling part of Taxi Driver may have happened after audiences had already seen the movie. The story was fiction. But in 1981, the line between the film and real life became disturbingly thin when John Hinckley Jr. attempted to assassinate President Ronald Reagan. Hinckley had become obsessed with Jodie Foster after seeing Taxi Driver, and he later said that the movie influenced his thinking. The connection shocked the public and permanently changed the way many people looked at the film. But there is an important distinction. The movie did not simply cause what happened. Hinckley's actions came from his own disturbed thinking and obsession. Still, the fact that he connected himself to the film created a terrifying real-world echo of Travis Bickle. And suddenly, scenes that had once seemed like dark fiction were being discussed in a completely different way. The connection was especially disturbing because Travis is a character who builds an imaginary relationship with violence. He convinces himself that his actions have a larger meaning. Hinckley, in his own very different circumstances, also created a private fantasy around Foster. The similarities were enough to make people uncomfortable. Jodie Foster was questioned about the incident. She had become famous as a child because of Taxi Driver, and now the movie's fictional story had become connected to a real attempted assassination. For the filmmakers, this created an uncomfortable question. Could a movie about a dangerous mind accidentally influence someone who was already unstable? There was no simple answer. But the incident also revealed something important about the movie. Taxi Driver had never really been about teaching viewers what to think. It forced viewers to enter Travis's world without giving them a safe explanation for everything they saw. That is part of why the film remains so powerful. Travis's worldview can feel convincing for a moment, then it becomes frightening. Then, just when the audience expects him to become the obvious villain, the story suddenly shifts again. After the violent climax, Travis survives. Then something strange happens. People begin treating him differently. The same man who was filled with rage and preparing for violence is suddenly viewed by others as someone who did something heroic. That ending has confused viewers for decades. Did Travis become a better person? Did society completely misunderstand him? Or was the movie showing us something much darker about the way people decide who deserves to be called a hero? The answer may be hidden in the final moments. Because the cast and filmmakers were never simply telling a story about one violent night in New York. They were showing how easily a person's private fantasy can collide with the outside world. And once you understand that, the final scene stops looking like a happy ending. It starts looking like a warning. The biggest revelation is that Taxi Driver was never really asking whether Travis Bickle was a hero. It was asking something much more uncomfortable. Look closely at the ending. Travis survives the bloody attack. Then the story jumps forward. Newspaper reports now describe him as someone who saved Iris. His fellow cab drivers treat him with respect. Even Betsy, the woman who rejected him earlier, looks at him differently. That sounds like redemption, but it may be the exact opposite. Earlier, Travis was isolated and angry. He wanted to become important. He wanted his life to have meaning. Then, after the violence, society gives him the identity he wanted, a hero. And that is a disturbing joke. The world does not fully understand what happened inside Travis's mind. It only sees the result. It sees the girl who survived. It sees the man who stopped the people around her. It does not see the long chain of obsession, anger, fantasy, and violence that brought him there. The filmmakers deliberately leave that contradiction hanging. The BFI has described the ending as a major shift in the film because Travis suddenly receives a public identity that clashes with the dangerous person we have watched for most of the story. Even the final taxi shot matters. We return to Travis behind the wheel, looking through the mirror at the city. The image feels familiar, almost as if the movie is starting again. The danger may not be gone. Nothing proves that Travis is truly changed. And that may be the point. Paul Schrader has explained that Taxi Driver came out of a deeply personal period in his own life, with loneliness at its center. He wrote the screenplay in about 10 days, drawing on experiences of isolation and ideas connected to Arthur Bremer's diary. Robert De Niro then gave Travis a physical presence that made the character unforgettable. And one of his most famous moments, the mirror scene, was improvised, including the line that became part of movie history. So what did most fans never figure out? Maybe the hidden truth is that Travis was never meant to be easy to understand. He is lonely but dangerous. He wants to save someone, but he is also searching for power. He is rejected by society, yet society eventually rewards him. And that contradiction is exactly what keeps Taxi Driver alive 50 years later. The movie does not give us a comfortable ending. It gives us a question. If a person commits terrible acts for reasons he believes are righteous, and the world later rewards the result, does that make him a hero? Or does it simply reveal how badly we misunderstood him? That question is still sitting inside the final image. And perhaps that is the real secret the cast and filmmakers helped us uncover. Taxi Driver was never just about one troubled cab driver. It was about loneliness becoming an identity, identity becoming obsession, and obsession finding a world willing to call it something else.